Good morning and welcome back to the True Crime Comedy Podcast, Murderess Podcast. I am your host, Sidney Smith. Thank you guys again for joining me this week. On this podcast, you and I will take a look into the real life murders committed by women. Before we get started, let me mention a couple of things. Please, if you could, go to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars there. We would appreciate it. Excuse me, when I say we, I mean me, you, and the team behind me. If you're listening elsewhere, please leave us a positive rating there. It costs you nothing to do so. So I am sitting here in my office at home. I'm here in AZ, and it is 10:22. Now, I had wanted to start this podcast a little bit earlier, but I was waiting to get a phone call from a dealership because the wife and I have been looking for another vehicle. And I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a late start. Got on the phone and had a little bit of a back and forth, but I'm waiting for a return phone call. I'm hoping for good things, only because my wife and I are tired of looking. Now, I would never tell a salesman that, or anyone who works at a dealership that, anyone out there who has been buying cars often enough over your lifetime, you know, and I know, the last thing. In fact, my wife made fun of me. We were going to go out the other day. Actually, we did go out, but I was getting ready to leave. And if you've never met me, you wouldn't know this, but I am a guy who likes to color coordinate, and everything needs to be ironed and everything needs to be a certain way. It's just kind of part of my OCD. But on this occasion, on any occasion where I'm going to have to go spend money, such as buying a car, I take a little bit, and this is probably going to be sour to some people's ears, but I am a kid who grew up with the Cosby Show. And one of my favorite episodes was watching Heathcliff Huxtable, played by Bill Cosby, go out with Theo to buy a car and watching him dress way down. So that is normally what I do for big purchases, whether it be a house, car, excuse me, washing machine and dryer, anything of the sort. I want to look as close to impoverished as possible. So that is what I was doing. My wife made fun of me. I like to wear baseball caps when I work out at the gym. So I have a couple that I wear. They're not the best looking. They have some sweat stains in them, but they serve me well for the gym. And I decided that I was going to wear one of those while we went out to go car shopping. So she made fun of me on that. And it didn't turn out to be the greatest of times for us in terms of heading out, because again, if you've done this long enough, excuse me, take a sip of my coffee here. Again, it is 10:30 in the morning. If you've done this for a little bit of time, or at least have some elders in your life to give you a tip, you just don't want to walk into a dealership and just say, hey, show me everything you got, or allow them to lead you. You want to go in with some type of plan that you're going to stick to. So my wife and I are normally pretty good at that. She's as frugal as I am when it comes to these things. So we had a couple of cars we did want to go see. We're a Toyota family, but we were kind of looking for another one of those. But the inventory has just been so piss poor right now. It does not seem like, for whatever reason, and I'm going to assume for the same reason, we've seen a slowdown in home sales. I would imagine there's been much of the same for car sales with the interest rates skyrocketing up and people maybe not having as much funds as they would have had maybe a couple of years ago or 3 years ago. I mean, I think we're still all stuck on blaming it all on COVID, only because I think the manufacturers of everything are still stuck on blaming it all on COVID. I was watching a report of that yesterday where they're saying that Biden's probably going to come out and do a little bullying from his pulpit. He's already kind of started letting these guys know, stop the bullshit, stop the nonsense, stop the COVID excuses. And they were coming up with some different ways that he can go about pushing some companies out there. For one example they were using were the makers of diapers and just what those cost now. And at a certain point within the last couple of years, their costs had shot up. And of course, they passed that on to the consumer. But they've seen a dramatic decline in their cost in producing diapers. Yet there has not been a dramatic decline in the pricing. So I'm sure that's a lot of that going on and why the inventory has been so piss poor. And we just have not been able to find what we want. But I will say between the two of us, there's this gap as wide as the Grand Canyon between what she would like to have and what I think I would like to have, if I can say that, because I would like to go out and buy a more expensive vehicle. But again, my frugality won't let me go all the way there. If you believe my mother, she'll tell you I'm cheap. And she says I get it from my grandmother, who was told once upon a time by her brother, "You're so cheap you could squeeze the head off a buffalo nickel." Now, I don't think I'm that tight with money. I don't think I am. But I guess it all depends on who you ask. But it has just been a nightmare, whether looking at inventory or just trying to find someone who can point me in the right direction of some things. I spoke with a friend of mine who was in the industry, and he said, "I got a buddy who I trust as much as I trust you. You got to go see him." And so we go to see him, and it just was not the best experience. It wasn't the worst experience I've ever had. I think the worst experience I've ever had was when I was a young kid going out to buy my first car on my own and getting taken advantage of, which is a story for another time. Maybe I'll share that with you guys at a later date. But it was just not the best in terms of what they had. Again, going back to inventory, they brought a car out. We sat down at the desk with the salesman, kind of went through. First of all, we walked in. I told him exactly kind of what we were looking for. I would have actually appreciated during the phone call. And I'm not going to mention the dealership, the salesman, the GM, or anyone. But I would have appreciated during the initial phone call when I said what we were looking for if you had to just told me, we just don't have it. But that's not what was done. So I went in with the best of intentions, hoping that they were going to have something. And so we sat with the salesman and we went onto their website, which, as my wife would say later, I could have did that shit myself. And we found a couple of things just barely. And when I say just barely, these would be, depending on when you were raised, you would call a beater. I said, you know what? I'll just get a little beater. I'll pay this for it. I'm still paying more than I would normally probably have paid 2 or 3 years ago. But hey, the market is what the market is. But I'll get it. So let's see these two vehicles here. The first one that comes around, we can't get the hood up, and I it was kind of a humorous thing because never in all my years have I had a car pulled around at a dealership and they couldn't get the hood up. What he doubled down on with it was, "Hey, do you still want to take it for a test drive?" No, I can't check the car out before I would even take it. Would I look 18? Yeah, and turn the radio on and turn it all the way up while I test drive the car. The second car he brought around, we ended up taking it out because we could actually get the hood up. And we ended up taking the car out and I pushed it a little bit. And as we were coming back, he was talking to me about this, that, and the other. And I'm sure, and I didn't say this because I was in sales years ago. I was a sales trainer years ago. I don't think I would have brought up the tax title and all those fees on the test drive, because when he added those numbers in while we were just driving, that almost doubled the car. And so that was an automatic turnoff for me right away with that vehicle as well. But I did want to see the Carfax because I had asked for it. And he pulled that up while I was standing outside talking with the wife. And I went in and he offered me a seat at his desk, offered me his seat at his desk. And I scrolled to, I'm sure, what he wanted me to see. I'm sure he did not expect for me to take control of the mouse and scroll to what I wanted to see, which was the entire Carfax report. And it didn't just have the one collision at some point in the back. There was also another accident that had happened on the front side of the car, and the car had changed hands so many times since it had been purchased in California. I mean, a lot of red flags with this car. I mean, when I say changed hands, it had been to 3 or 4 different dealerships in a short period of time, just here in the beautiful state of Arizona. So this was going to be a no. I politely took his business card with the information, but I couldn't get the hell out of there quick enough. And once we left, we decided that we were just going to go to lunch. So Our day consisted of getting ready, me putting on I'm going to buy a car hat, going out to one dealership, seeing one car where the hood wouldn't pop, test driving another car, which I was not completely sold on, but I said, hey, it's this price. It's not that bad. I'll drive it. It's a beater. I won't the wife can drive the other vehicle. No big deal. And then that car turned out to be what that car was. And we went to lunch. And it was nice. We had a very nice lunch at Schlossky's, which is one of my favorite sandwich shops here in AZ. But it is just, again, I don't know if you're out there or have been out there trying to buy a car. It is not the easiest of times. I don't care what your credit score is. You're going to have a hard time buying a car. We're the type of people who like to walk in. This is what we want. This is what we're getting. No, don't ask if we're putting any money down. I might as well set that money on fire for the amount of money some people put down, and everyone has their own way to go about it. For me, it doesn't reduce the price of the car, the payment of the car enough for me to, hey, here's some cash up front for you. I know it does great things for you, makes you feel good. But I'd rather keep my cash doing what I need my cash to do. So we like to walk in that way. And again, prepared, knowing what we want. When we went out and bought our vehicle a few years ago, one of our vehicles a few years ago, that's kind of how we approached it. And we're pretty hard asses about it. But there's no room for that right now, mostly because there's not a lot of inventory, at least not for us, not for what we're looking for. And we're normally pretty picky. So just waiting to hear back and see if we do going to have our hands on the vehicle that we did find here online, and just waiting to hear back. So hopefully that comes through. Not that you guys give two shits about any of that at all. But again, if you are new to the podcast, this is, I kind of like to get myself warmed up before I start getting into the story, which we have a great one for you right around the corner. So you guys either can fast forward or you can just, you can keep on listening to my dulcet tones as I talk to you a little bit more. And for any of you people out there who still have your Christmas lights up, you know who you are. What date is it? January 19th. Take those lights down. Get those lights down, man. You are lowering the property value of your neighborhood. I said it. You are lowering the property value in your neighborhood, and you don't even know it. Take those Christmas lights down. You had enough gumption to put them up. Let's get some gumption to take them down. Now, I know it was tough getting the kid to go out there and hold the ladder, and I don't know what you people are doing right now. You're still using nails. What are you using? Tacks. Whatever it is, get all that shit out of your house. It looks absolutely horrible. And for you people who still have your stuff up and the lights still come on at night, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. These are the times where I am happy that I have an HOA. I am happy that I have an HOA. I know everyone likes to bitch and complain, and every once in a while I'll bitch and complain about mine, though I do think they're pretty good. They're a little nosy from time to time, but I think they're pretty good. But this is a time where I love it. There's no way you could pull that in my neighborhood. So get those lights down. People, get those lights down. Also, I mentioned this last week for our first podcast of 2024, which I heard from a friend of mine. I don't think she cared for it that much. But I got to tell you, I thought last week's show, I thought I was a little rusty, but I thought the story was a good one, and it had a nice little twist to it. She texted me. She said, this, that, and the other. I said, listen to the entire story, then complain to me. Then complain. Now, I'm not asking for anyone else out there to complain. She complains because she has my phone number, and she will nag me if I decide I need to take a week off or play a rerun or something of that sort. But I said, just listen to the whole episode. I liked this story last week. I'm going to like the story this week as well. And I'm loving being back. 2024. 2024. I would have swore, I have to go back and watch, but I'm pretty sure Back to the Future and Michael J. Fox, we're supposed to have hoverboards and flying cars and all kind of shit right now. Casinos up in the sky. They had one black guy. That's more than the Jetsons had. So that was an uptick. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be around. We should still be around. Black people, myself included, should still be around when we get the flying cars and the hoverboards. But we should have had that shit by now, man. It's 2024. I can't believe it. We're almost all the way through January. So 2024 is getting ready to fly like last year did. I'm happy that it's here. Last year was a bumpy year, had a lot of different things going on that I was trying to get done. My comedy special, for one, which is going to drop in March. I can't wait for that. Started the podcast with the wife called Running in Slow Motion, which we really enjoy doing. We just dropped our latest episode of that on on Tuesday. So that been getting some great comments from people about that episode as well. And for people out there who heard me say podcast with my wife, it is not a podcast where we tell you how to live your life and live your marriage. We don't believe in that. We hate that. Can't stand that. If you ask us a question, which some people have early on, we will answer it, though. We will give you our advice and our thoughts on whatever it is you're asking. But for the most part, it's just she and I talking about ourselves and our marriage and the hills and the valleys and all those different things. If you can take something away from it, great. If you can't, that's fine too. We try to be entertaining either way. My wife, who is not an entertainer professionally, such as myself, is ramping up and getting better and better each and every week about being on the microphone. And people, again, are just loving this. She's getting a lot of great reviews from people. So our plan is to have some guests on, doctors, psychiatrists, other friends of ours that are married, unmarried people, and just have some great conversations, man. So this is just another great podcast we have here on the You Hear Good Things podcast network. That's right. I have a podcast network called You Hear Good Things. And so those are just a couple of the three. You listen to this one now, obviously. You're a fan of this one, and I appreciate you. I'm just asking, if you want, check out Running in Slow Motion. If you dig it, give it a great review. If you don't dig it, you never heard of it. That's it. You just never heard of it, man. I wish more people would just tell you that. If you don't like my chicken, just say, yeah, I've never tried this chicken. You don't have to go out there and shit on it. Just say you never tried it. Don't ruin it for someone else. Someone else may like it. Maybe it's not to your liking flavor-wise. Pardon me, folks. Coffee. The good stuff. Actually, my wife's got me hooked on this Pete's coffee. I'm a Starbucks guy. If I'm out at home, I'm a Pete's coffee guy. Mainly because this is the coffee that my wife buys and puts in the Keurig. It is good coffee, though. I do like it. I like a nice warm cup of coffee or tea when I'm starting my day. But I like it mostly if I'm going to sit down and be speaking to you guys the way that I am, or speaking to anyone else for that matter, because it kind of gets my my throat kind of warm and gets it warmed up, gets it going. So I do like it for that reason. We did have, and I want to mention this, not to bring anyone down. I want to mention this because you may find the story jives with it, but we did have the DOJ, and I don't care if you're a Trump person, a Biden person, Nikki Haley, DeSantis. I don't care about any of that. You know, myself, I'm a conservative, independent conservative, was a lifelong Republican. I do not always vote conservative, but that is who I am. And I'm saying that because I don't want anyone to have the automatic thought of, because a lot of times African-American Democrats, that's the way they vote. So I'm not saying you're wrong for making that assumption, but sometimes that is the natural assumption for people to make. And I don't want that to be made, because what I want to say is I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. What happened to those kids in Uvalde was absolutely terrible. And the DOJ has come out yesterday. Not that we needed them to. We didn't need a report. We know that there was a lot of things done wrong when it came to the mass shooting at the elementary school. For my money and in my opinion, I've said this on my other podcast, Not As Debatable, that I do with my buddy Deion Curry, fellow comedian Deion Curry out of Indy. It was just cowardice in so many different ways. When you look at the video, I want to say here, the cameras that were on the uniforms of the police officers, and you hear some of the audio and how that gun just rang out and rang out and rang out inside that classroom, and no one made a move to go and save those poor children. So it put me in the mind of, and I never thought about it before or when that happened in Uvalde, but for some reason it made me think about it now. When was the earliest school shooting? And there were a few that had happened. And I don't think the earliest one I can remember was Columbine. And I remember sitting in a hospital in an emergency room, and I was watching it on the television kind of play out. And I was a young man then, and not understanding, like many of us, not understanding what was to come for this country in terms of mass shootings and school shootings. And so I never gave a whole lot of thought to, had this happened at a school before that? I just hadn't. It just never was something that was on my radar. And at that time, I don't think any of us thought we would see Columbine again. And when I say Columbine, I don't mean that many casualties. I don't mean anything on that scale. I just mean to see two students go in and do what they did. And we've seen so much of that now, leading up to 2024. Now, I think the FBI calls a mass shooting anything where 3 or 4 people are killed, I believe, or injured. And so I guess you can play with that number any way you want to. But when you're talking about going in or just shooting innocent children, that's a whole nother thing. And I don't care what age they are. So it made my mind think about this week. Man, this could not have just happened. Columbine could not have been the first one. It had to be something else. And so we had some other stories that were loaded up and ready to go for you guys. The research team had pulled together. But I did a little research and found this one. And I put this one together, and I hesitate to say I hope that you guys enjoy it, because I want you to enjoy the podcast, because I want you to keep listening to the podcast. I want you to give the podcast 5 stars. I want you to share it with friends, and hopefully they listen. So, of course, I want you to enjoy the podcast. Of course. No one does a podcast not wanting listeners to enjoy it. I guess I don't know what I want you guys to take from the pod this week. I don't get emotional about much. Kids, I 100% do. 100% I do. And my wife and I don't have any. We don't have any kids. Many of you out there might. So if this is something that you feel you can't listen to because it hits too close to home for you, I completely get it. But this was one that just spoke to me this week, given that I knew that report was going to be dropping at some point this week. So here we go. Charles Cam Miller sees a scar on his chest every day and remembers how, when he was 9 years old, a bullet from Brenda Spencer's .22 rifle pierced him from the back to the front. He vividly recalls the sight of Principal Burton Ragg and head custodian Michael Suture lying bleeding in front of Cleveland Elementary School in the San Carlos neighborhood. And Miller has never forgotten the horror he felt when he lay in an ambulance next to an inert Suture. And as the ambulance rounded a curve, the custodian rolled on top of him, face to face. Now, I don't know how you could ever get that out. And I can only imagine that Mr. Miller has had many a nightmare, not just about the shooting, but about this moment here, this scene here. Spencer, then 16, armed with a rifle and scope her father gave her for Christmas, started picking off students heading to the elementary school directly across the street from her Lake Atlant Avenue home. Miller was one of her victims. Today, school shootings are something we have become all too familiar with. Some may have even become numb to it. But back in the 1970s, school shootings were unheard of. Brenda Ann Spencer was a 16-year-old student who lived across the street from Grover Elementary School in San Diego. And on that morning of January 29th, 1979, she took a position in a window overlooking the school, armed with a Ruger rifle. What unfolded in the next few minutes would not only shock the nation, but also thrust the issue of school shootings into the forefront of public consciousness. So again, we are looking at 1979. Many of us were not born yet. Many of us may have been, 2, 3, 4 years old. Some of us may be born before. So maybe you were aware of this. But this is not anything that I was ever taught or talked to about. I had never heard of. 1979. The event marked the first high-profile school shooting that would set a precedent for the disturbing trend that will follow in the decades to come. Brenda Spencer killed 2 people that morning and wounded 9 when she fired on that school. Those 2 murder victims again were Principal Burton Ragg and that custodian, Mr. Suture. There was even 1 police officer wounded. During the shooting, a reporter phoned houses near the school looking for information about what was going on. He actually reached Spencer, who freely admitted that she was the one doing the shooting. When asked why she was doing what she was doing, one of the things was said to have told him was, "I don't like Mondays." And that alleged comment was widely publicized. Spencer later said she did not recall making the remark. Now, I don't know if she made it, and I don't know if the reporter made it up. But what a hell of a thing to say, "I don't like Mondays." And I'm leaning towards believing she made the comment. Only because it takes a certain mindset, obviously, to do what she was doing. Someone of a callous nature. Someone with no concern with others. Even elementary school age children. I don't like Mondays. Spencer was 16 years old herself. And she was 5 foot tall, unusually thin, had bright red hair. A classmate described her as pretty crummy looking, quote unquote. Prior to the shooting, Brenda reportedly expressed a desire for infamy. She spoke to friends about her fascination with crimes and the desire to commit a significant act that would make her famous. Now, you can drop the crimes part out, but there were a lot of teenagers who thought about, I just want to be famous. How can I be famous? I remember growing up as a kid and having a rap group called DOA, Death on Arrival. DEF on Arrival. Just for you people to know, not DEATH on Arrival. But never was there a fascination with crimes. Acquaintances later said Spencer expressed negative attitudes toward the police as well and had talked about shooting one. Teachers described her as introverted. Sometimes they inquired if she was even awake. Later during tests while she was in custody, it was discovered Spencer had an injury to the temporal lobe of her brain, attributed to an accident on her bicycle. And I tried to find some information when I was researching this story on the temporal lobe. I'm not a doctor, and I try not to play one when I'm doing this podcast, but I did try to see if any injury to the temporal lobe of the brain had anything to do with violence and so on and so forth and so all that good stuff. And I couldn't find a direct link to it. Spencer excelled in photography, winning first prize in a Humane Society competition. After her parents separated, she lived with her father, Wallace Spencer, in virtual poverty. They slept on a single mattress on the living room floor. Police later found half-empty alcohol bottles throughout the house. In 2001, she accused her father of having drunkenly subjected her to beatings and sexual abuse. He said the allegations were not true. Spencer is said to self-identify herself as having been gay from birth. So, one thing I did not add, it just occurred to me, I did not add, and so I'm going to loosely refer to it. So forgive me if you find more detail than I'm going to present. But in terms of her father abusing her, I lean towards believing her on that accord, though I don't want to believe this mass shooting murderer. And only because her father later married one of her cellmates, who I believe was only 17 years old at the time. And so I think it takes a special type of man to marry, to have sex, or date a girl 17 years old. It takes an even more special one to do it with a girl who is a cellmate, friend, acquaintance of your daughter. In early 1978, staff at a facility for problem pupils, which Spencer had been referred to due to her truancy, informed her parents that she was suicidal. That summer, Spencer was arrested for shooting out the windows of the Cleveland Elementary with a BB gun and a burglary. In December, a psychiatric evaluation arranged by her probation officer recommended Spencer be admitted to a mental hospital due to her depressed state, but her father refused to give permission. Now, did he refuse to give permission because he was just a bad dad? Or did he refuse to give permission? Let's go back to kind of where we just left off, because he was afraid of some things coming out about him. For Christmas of 1978, he gave her a Ruger semi-automatic .22 caliber rifle with a telescopic sight and 500 rounds of ammunition. So here we are. She commits the shooting commits the shooting in January of 1979. In 1978, it is thought that she may have some type of mental issue, some type of depression. Her probation officer wants to seek help for her. Her father turns that down in early 78. And then for Christmas of 78, he gives her the Ruger semi-automatic .22 caliber rifle that she will use to try to slaughter children. Not only does he give her the rifle, but he gives her a telescopic sight and 500 rounds of ammunition. Spencer later said, "I asked for a radio and he bought me a gun." When asked why he might have done that, she answered, "I felt like he wanted me to kill myself." Now, I do think we have to keep in mind that Brenda's father, Wallace Spencer, also owned his own collection of guns. So I gotta try to be as balanced as possible. Not that this is Fox News or anything. But this may have been something that maybe he wanted to share with his daughter. At minimum, this is a man who lacked the ability to make good decisions. And I guess that can go all the way back to the fact that they had a single mattress on the floor, living in poverty. Yet he had a collection of guns that was easily available to her. Again, we have to remember that this was before the advent of mass shootings. So keeping guns locked up was not a high priority during those times. And I've talked about this before, even where I grew up in Michigan. Excuse me, folks. Even in Michigan, where I grew up, initially in Detroit, but my mother ended up moving us to a rural area where hunting was just a way of life. And many kids that I went to school with had their own guns that they had access to, or they had access to their parents' guns. And I think even now looking at it, I know that is still the case in a lot of areas. And I'm just going to speak about the Midwest and Michigan specifically. That is still the case for a lot of different areas there. Because that is just the way of life. That is just the way things are done. Now I'm sure, and I know some people are back home are a little more cautious than they used to be. Because you just don't know about your kid or the kid your kid is friends with. So on the morning of Monday, Spencer began shooting from her home at children who were waiting outside the school. And they were out there waiting because the principal hadn't opened the gates, so they were waiting for Principal Burton Ragg to open those gates. And she injured 8 children ranging in the age of 8 to 13. Again, like we said before, this was when Principal Ragg was killed. And the custodian, Mike Sucher, was killed while he was trying to pull Ragg to safety. Now, again, I did not put in the story, but let me know, one of the kids remembered that these two did not get along, the principal and the custodian. But that custodian was killed trying to pull the principal to safety. One of those children was Miller. He was one of the kids, one of the 8 out there. I'm sorry, one of the 8 kids who was injured. One of those children was Miller, who believed Spencer targeted him that morning because he was wearing a down vest in her favorite color, blue. Other children in down coats were targeted too, and Spencer later was quoted as saying she enjoyed seeing feathers fly as she shot them. Miller recalls that his mother had just dropped him off at about 8:30 a.m., and he saw the principal and the custodian lying in the parking lot near bushes. And then he felt a sharp pain and blacked out for a moment. Then a neighbor girl helped him toward the school building. He and other wounded children were hustled to the auditorium to wait for an ambulance. Quote, I lay in the cafeteria, it seemed like forever, close quote, with a bullet entry wound in his back and chest exit wound. Kid, you're 8 years old. Just let me remind you, he was 8 years old at the time. The San Diego Police Department responded quickly and surrounded the school and secured the area. Spencer, barricaded in her home, continued her assault on the school from a distance. Now, here's where there is a huge difference in 1979 to what we kind of spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, towards the beginning of the podcast, with that Uvalde, with those cops in Uvalde. A police officer responding to a call for assistance during the incident was shot in the neck as he arrived. Once San Diego police had arrived, patrol officer Ted Kasanek, make sure I say that correctly, halted a garbage truck driver headed into the shooting scene and commandeered the truck. He drove it into the parking lot to serve as a shield while officers and school staff removed the wounded. What a heroic thing to do. What a heroic thing to do. If we only had a police officer with that type of heart and that type of courage in Texas. Right away, a volley of shots started. Then it stopped, Kasanik said. He took cover behind the truck as SWAT officers surrounded the Spencer house. Officer Rob, wounded in the neck by a round from Spencer, was huddled behind a tree with other officers, Kasanik recalled. Rob was awarded a Medal of Valor for rushing forward to try to save those who had been shot, and as well he should have been. Were there any Medal of Valor awards given in Texas? I don't think so. SWAT officer Jim McGinley said he took up a sniper position on a neighbor's roof. His rifle trained on the Spencer back door. SWAT officer Marty Duitz aimed his rifle at the front door from the safety of a schoolroom. They said they had a green light to kill Spencer if they had an opportunity. Spencer barricaded herself inside her home for nearly 7 hours While there, she had a telephone conversation, and that's when she spoke with that journalist. And that's where she said, "I don't like Mondays." And then added, "This livens up the day." She later also spoke with those police negotiators, telling them those she had shot made easy targets and that she was going to come out shooting. But Officer Paul Olson, the primary negotiator, talked to Spencer on and off by phone for hours, urging her to throw out her gun and surrender. He promised that a Burger King Whopper would be waiting for her. I used to love Whopper. Now 72, Olson has kept his report notes from that day. He says Spencer told him things like having shot a rabbit in the back of his head from 25 yards. She said the school victims look like a herd of cows gathering around the wounded, making them easy pickings. So again, callous. And I don't, and this officer has no reason to lie about this. In my estimation, how can you be 16 years old and be so callous when it comes to the life of your fellow human beings, especially children? What was done to her? Or did she just come into this world with this disposition? Spencer came out of her house not like the way she said. She didn't come out blazing. She didn't come out firing. She didn't come out doing any of that. Spencer came out of her house about 2:30 p.m., laying her rifle and a pellet rifle on the ground. She also laid down the boxes of ammunition. Police officers found beer and whiskey bottles cluttered around the house, but Spencer did not appear to be intoxicated at the time of her arrest. It's always amazing that these people, well, you know what? I guess I got to give her more courage than some of the ones we've seen here of recent times, where they're going to go out in a blaze of glory, suicide by cop, or just kill themselves outright. Kastanek and Officer Patty Bernathy drove the team to the homicide unit for questioning. Spencer ended up being tried as an adult, and she pled guilty to 2 counts of murder and assault with a deadly weapon. She was sentenced to prison for 25 years to life. In prison, she was diagnosed as an epileptic. Now, she has received medication for the treatment of that and to treat her depression while at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. Under the terms of her indeterminate sentence, I should have said, in 1993, Spencer became eligible for hearings to consider her suitability for parole. She was unsuccessful at 4 board of parole hearings. In practice, very few of those convicted of murder obtained parole in California. So nothing too different than what they would have done for anyone else. And that was something that I was not aware of either. I didn't know that the usual practice in California, California gets the rep of being so lenient and so on and so forth on crime. And I guess I don't know if I want to give them too much credit or anything. I would love to see what the numbers would be for other states on how they deal with parole for murderers. At her first board of parole hearing, Spencer said she had been a user of alcohol and drugs at the time of the crime, and that the tests showing she did not have drugs in her system when taken into custody must have been falsified. At a hearing in 2001, Spencer said her father had beat and sexually abused her. The parole board chairman said that, as she had not previously told any prison staff about the allegations, he doubted whether they were true. I've gone back and forth on this as I, again, was doing the research and then putting this story together and then reading and rereading. And every time I've read this paragraph, I just change my mind every time. And so right now, as I read it, I tend to lean with the parole board chairman. Again, back and forth. How would he know? When you do this thing alone, in terms of recording it alone, you have to read everything and go through it. Depending on the story, and so your mind would change depending on how things get put in and things get taken out. I don't know where you are. I mean, do you believe? I know there are some people who you look at the lives that some of these people, these children, have lived, and we see it not just with mass shootings, but we see it with kids who commit all sorts of crimes. I think sometimes if the crime is heinous enough, we will not give any credit to how the child is brought up. People always say, is it nature, is it nurture? Is it this, or is it that? And so again, with Spencer here, my mind was going back and forth. But as I'm reading again with you guys, I do lean towards the parole board chairman. You've never brought any of this stuff up before. It is now 2001. You've been in prison for a long time, trying to come up with ways that you can get out. And on that, I'm not hating you for it. If I'd been in prison from 1979 to 2001, I'm trying to come up, and I'm sure some of my friends inside of this prison are trying to give me some tips on how to get the hell out of here. What worked for her may work for you. So I lean towards the parole chairman on this one. She remains in jail in California, in Chino. Her next shot for parole will be in 2025. So, hopefully for her, I'm sure in her mind, last year rose as fast as this year seems like it's going to roll. But I don't think she has a prayer of getting out. The Cleveland Elementary School shooting marked a tragic turning point in the way society perceives and responds to school shootings. The incident raised awareness about the potential for violence in schools and public buildings and prompted a reassessment of school safety measures. My wife is an educator, for people who are new to this podcast. So there is not too many days that go by where I don't find my mind drifting to the what ifs. And she'll text me if they have a lockdown or anything of that nature. She'll make sure that I am in the know on those things, which I definitely appreciate. Thankfully, there's not been any issues at this point, and I pray that there won't be any at all ever. But it is definitely a different thing when you are married to an educator, or if you are an educator today, to know that at any point in time, and that's how you have to leave your home, I think, is to try your best not to be caught off guard. Not that anyone can just be walking around and just every day, and that's at the forefront of your mind. It's impossible. It's impossible unless you were trained in the military or something along those lines. And even then, I think the further away you get away from that training, your mind can relax. So if you're looking at it from the standpoint of being kids or educators, and you've never went through the discipline and the training that military members, combat individuals have to go through, is especially stressful on the mind to have to think about, where do I go? I got to get the kids. Where's the safe zone? How do I lock it all down? And all the other steps that they have to go through in the event something like this would happen. And as someone who is married to an educator or someone who has children, the best you can do is send them out the door with as much love as possible and pray that they're never in a situation like this or any of the situations we've seen most recent years. And if they are, God forbid, that they have the same type of cowardice individuals that those poor children had in Texas. So the incident raised awareness about the potential for violence in schools and public buildings and prompted a reassessment of school safety measures. Looking back on the event today, we can see it as a precursor of a disturbing trend of school shootings that would unfold in the following decades. The event underscored the need for ongoing discussions about gun control and mental health awareness. And when you get to this point, you get to this part of this story, with that last line, the event underscored the need for ongoing discussions about gun control and mental health awareness. That is where we have to fall back and say, what are the people that we put in power to protect us and our families? What are they doing? And there's not been enough done, in my opinion, on either one of these things. And then again, which one is it when we talk about this? Which one of these, if not both, would solve? Is it the mental health awareness? Is it the gun control? I don't have any answers. You don't have any answers. I'm assuming you don't have any answers. I'm assuming not too many people out there know what the right answer is, other than we have to do something. We just can't stand pat. I just, again, this was one that I wanted to do, given that the report for Uvalde was going to be released this week, and I think it was just released yesterday. And again, just thinking to myself, Columbine was the first for me. But I said it couldn't have been the first one ever. And it wasn't. Brenda Ann Spencer, 16 years old, 5 foot tall, unusually thin, bright red hair. Classmate described her as pretty crummy looking. I wonder if someone had a better thought about her. I wonder if she might have had a different life and done something different that day. About the story you just heard, we sourced it from murderpedia.org, wikipedia.org, historydefined.net. The article was Brenda Ann Spencer, A Bad Case of the Mondays by Kyle Carmine. The San Diego Tribune, the article, 40 years ago, Brenda Spencer took lives, changed lives in a mass shooting at the San Diego Elementary School by Pauline Ripard. Thank you guys for joining me again. I'll see you next week. Remember, be aware of your surroundings. And I'll see you next week.